to a music video. That would be really fun.
So how do you'd pick a song that exists already, and then you have to sign the whole song?
Yeah. You pick the song you want, and then they'll play the music video, but you have to sign the whole thing.
And is that only York, or like anywhere where you go to learn ASL, they would
that's
make
the example? I don't know. I don't know. I just remember for York, like that was the big thing, because like everyone talked about that exam, was like that was the cool exam, was that you pick a music video and then you do sign language to it.
I hope that still exists. Let's take it. If it exists, let's take it.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's funny. It's funny we talk about that too, because in the comics for Echo, her big comic that this whole thing is sort of based on, as a part of her development as a child, she actually excelled in music, and you do see it in Hawkeye too, where she feels the speaker, but she loved to just feel the vibrations of the instrument she would play and like try to play the music. It was really cool.
That's wicked. Hey, if Beethoven could do it, right? Beethoven was a musical genius, and he could hear things. So he was probably doing the same thing, feeling all the vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're going to do this whole podcast only in ASL. First podcast in history to do so.
I would love the technology that Kingpin had.
Oh my God, imagine.
Right? That is so cool. Contact lens that allows people to perceive in mixed reality, augmented reality sign language. That's the way to do it, man. Technology. I love it.
You know what those hands reminded me of? Have you ever played Zelda Skyward Sword?
Yes.
There was a mission in Skyward Sword, and it was on the big Sky Island where you're born.
Yeah.
And there was a room in like the Sky Island Academy that had a ghost, and it was haunted. And if you go in that room at night, the guy is like sleeping in his bed, and you just see like a hand just like touching his face, and he's like, "Oh, I'm scared." And the hand looked exactly like the hands from Kingpin's contact lens.
Oh, okay. Very cool. I don't remember that. I mean, I did love Skyward Sword for the extra motion controls that you could do, because it had the extra that expandable that expansion piece that would allow you to do more unique movements as opposed to just linear left and right and up and down.
Yeah, the Wii Motion Plus.
That's the one. Wii Motion Plus. Great console. So underrated. Oh my God.
I still remember when you were like prepping for it, you and Izzy, our friend Izzy, and you guys were so excited for the Wii to come out. And you were just like, I think you got yourself like a place in line and like a ticket to go buy it on like day one or something. I could be imagining that wrong.
No, that wasn't my end. It could have been Izzy's end, but for me, what happened was I had a what was formerly known as EB Games at the time. I had one within walking distance, and I would call them so feverishly every single day. I felt bad too, and you know, it's funny. They told me down the road, they're like, "Yeah, you don't feel bad. Like people called us every minute. You called us like, you know, twice a day. Like it's not as bad, right?" But I called them every day, and I would call them with different accents so they wouldn't recognize that it was me doing it. So I tried like a British accent, and then I tried like a high-pitched nerdy accent. I tried to keep it as like, so like no one could figure out it was me, not realizing that they had caller display the whole time. But the day they had it, I'll never forget it. I was working a couple part-time jobs at the time, and I literally like hustled like Captain America, just like down the street. And if you knew where I lived like near a GO station, so there was this long stretch of road, and you could just see me just like, ah! And I got there, and they said they wouldn't put it on hold for you or anything. Like if you got there, it was first come first serve. Thankfully, when I got there was like 2 left, and I was like, "Oh, thank God!" And so I got it.
Why am I only hearing the story about the different accents on the phone now when I've known you all these years? Can I hear what your British thing was like when you called? Tell me exactly what you said on the phone. I'll be the EB employee. Hello, I am an EB employee. Thank you for calling my store. How may I help you?
I'd be like, oh man, I'm gonna butcher it because I'm on the spot right now. I'm never good being on the spot. But I was like, hello, do you guys have a Nintendo Wii available in your store? And they'd be like, yes, Michael Caine, we do. I'm not Michael Caine, but I would love to have a Nintendo Wii. I would.
Wow, that's incredible. Michael Caine probably called them too. There was Mario Galaxy available. Wanted to get first dibs before Ryan got it all himself.
Yeah, so that's the accent I decided to go with as one of them. Then the other one was like, "Hello, can I get do you guys have like a Nintendo Wii in your play?" I'm sorry you had to experience that.
I'm not. I'm glad it is now preserved on the internet. It exists, and everybody is going to be listening to that till the end of time. I love that. Mm-hmm. Wow. Welcome to Michael Caine Rewatch, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Andrew Fantasia.
What's up, everybody? I'm Ryan J. Whitehead. Today, we are excited. I actually am excited to talk about this because although I have some opinions on the show, mm-hmm. I do think there is some merit to be introduced to the new way of how they're presenting content with the show. This is something different. And it kind of already kicks it off in terms of us just diving right in. So this is the first we've ever seen of a Marvel spotlight.
Yes.
This is a true Marvel spotlight. And personally, I kind of like it. I kind of like what they were trying to do. And I think this is the modern way of doing an origin story, because it's a great snapshot by not only, and it's what we talked about exactly on the last episode with the what ifs, is like all you need to do now for an origin story is like Echo's story is already started. It's already there. And all they do is quick flashbacks, and they give you quick references, and that's it. It's exactly like the Spider-Man formula, where it's like, I got bitten by a radioactive spider, my uncle died, moving on. Like, it's just like, the story. And like with Echo, the smart thing is we don't know the story, but they literally give you enough ammunition to understand exactly how the story works. And I loved it. I will say I would say that to start, but what I will also say is, man, did they kick it off hardcore with the first episode. The first episode, I texted my boy here, Fantasia, and I was like, oh my God, first episode is amazing. And I stand by that. Like the first episode, and Aquila, I love her as that character. I think she is a great performer. I think she has great on-screen presence. That's something you can't teach. Like the second the camera is on her, you are focused. Like you are 100% interested in what she has to do and how she's going to do it. And yeah, that first episode kicks it off. But this is definitely a very unique way to introduce a character and give them their own content. I think that is brilliant.
I'm so curious now about these Marvel spotlight things, because I want to know. I mean, they wouldn't create that name, that label, if they didn't plan on doing at least one or two more of these. And I want to know, what their thought process is, where in terms of what shows are Marvel Spotlight and what shows aren't. Is it just a mature audiences thing? Because, I mean, we'll get into it more later, but this didn't end up being as mature audience as I think they made it out to be, right? But
yes and no. There's definitely moments where I'm like, wow, they went there. They did it.
There's some dark stuff in here, but definitely not anything to be like, ooh, tell the kids not to watch. I wouldn't be surprised though, Ryan, if Marvel's Spotlight replaces the what did they even call them? The one-shot things, the Guardians Holiday Special. What was that thing called?
They're not one-shots. They're
special.
Special presentation.
Special presentation. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this replaces that, because it's something that is, at least just from an Echo standpoint, slightly less popular than what the Disney Plus shows are giving us in terms of like a character, right? And then on top of that, it's so short and it drops all in one time. Like I as I've been rewatching the shows, and I haven't done this to all of them yet, but I've been timing them, and I've been timing like, okay, from the moment the Marvel logo opens, how much, if I put all the episodes together, what is the runtime of like WandaVision? And it's, whatever, 4 hours and 53 minutes or whatever that is. And Echo was, I mean, there's no doubt about it, it's going to be the shortest one. And not just because it was only 5 episodes, but like those episodes were like 22 minutes, 29 minutes, 31 minutes. Like they really just breezed through, especially in the middle. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what becomes of the special presentation. If instead of a 45-minute thing, they'll put a little bit more into it and give us a handful of episodes that are on the shorter side. And I'm not sure if I love that yet, because I'm just a movie guy at heart. And I'm like, if your thing is going to equal out to be like 3.5 hours of runtime, just make a movie, man. Just make it. Just make it. Just make it. What's wrong? What are you waiting for?
I mean, yes and no. I agree. I agree that it's like, this could have been a movie. Honestly, you could have transformed it into a movie. It's just long enough that you could have taken out 1 or 2 scenes here and there that kind of weren't necessary. But yeah, I mean, it was perfect in the sense of like, yeah, it legit could have been a movie for someone that loves movies.
Yeah, and it just kind of further serves the whole thing where the companies that have streaming platforms are just desperate to put stuff on their streaming platforms to justify their existence. And when you get things like this that feel so short, that's where you really start to see that. So we really start to see, this was just put here because they wanted it to be put here, not because it was made to be put here, right? Like it's, but regardless, Alakwa Cox is awesome.
Yeah, she's an amazing character. But like, she's like one of those castings that just merges right into the world and feels like she belongs there. You know what I mean? There are some times with casting where I'm like, okay, like they had to kind of put some work into it to make them kind of fit in, but she just fits. She just like goes right in.
Oh my God. I want to be a fly on the wall in that audition room. Like I can just imagine them sitting there with their papers and they're like, okay, we need to cast an indigenous young woman who is also deaf and who can do physical superhero stuff. And then in walks Alakwa Cox, an indigenous young actor who is also deaf and can do superhero stuff and is a very talented actor to boot. And I'm just like, did they even see anybody else after her? And I didn't read any of the comics. I didn't know anything about the character. I assumed the character also was missing a leg. I didn't realize till after I looked it up and I'm like, oh no, that's just Alakwa Cox is actually missing a leg and they just worked that in. But I thought, like, what are the odds that also on top of being an indigenous deaf actor, she was also missing a leg like the character? And I'm like, did she just walk off the comic page? Like this is the biggest coincidence in the world. But still, like I can't imagine they looked at any other talent after Alakwa left the room, right?
I feel like they knew, like, yeah, you're right. Like once they found her, they're like, yeah, we just need to stop right here. There's no point in wasting any more time, anyone else's time. And not only that, one thing I have to give Aquila credit is like just the physicality, man. Like every fight scene, I was on the edge of my seat, just like watching this woman tear these people apart. Like, and like, oh my God. Like, and that, if it's one of the best takeaways I can take away from this show, is any action sequence with Echo is like, just yes. I hope they keep that fight choreographer for like every single Marvel project going forward. It's just so good. But yeah, I think once they found out, once they just found her, yeah, they just stopped for sure. And like, it was just amazing to watch. Like she's even, and what's unique about it is, again, just like finding such an interesting Marvel character and giving them the spotlight.
Exactly.
I didn't even plan for it to end like that, but it just did. I just did.
Sure you didn't. I knew you were working for them this whole time.
No, it's really something awesome. So first of all, Marvel Spotlight. So this show is really making a lot of conversations in a lot of unique ways. First of all, yes, this unique structure. Now, like I said, I agree with you that it could have, that you're maybe a movie fan and this is a good way to go. But, if you look at Daredevil and how Daredevil came into the extended world scene, and personally, I think what you need to do with these Marvel Spotlights is just that. One thing I'm kind of not really excited as a fan, or kind of like not interested in, is just season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. I don't need that. Anything that, like, unlike you who likes numbers in movies, I don't like numbers in movies. And I think with these Marvel shows, it's just that. Like, once you've introduced the character, don't give me a season 2. Give me something else that the character needs to be involved in. And so, like, She-Hulk season 2. Don't give me a She-Hulk season 2. Give me like some like Red Hulk, or like imagine a Red Hulk series and it involves all the Hulks we've seen thus far, and then introducing their stories, right? Or like expanding on their stories, bringing everyone together, right?
Yes. I agree. That's perfect. That's a perfect place to put She-Hulk now.
Exactly, right? So it's not like a She-Hulk season 2 and we need to learn what her Tuesdays are like. I don't care. Like, I've seen pretty much every day of her week in season 1, and I get it. I understand the challenges of the character. I like, that's the thing. Like, She-Hulk, I love the character. The story wasn't gracefully, or like, it wasn't graceful or perfect, but like, if you take the first 2 episodes out of She-Hulk and literally just look at those 2 episodes, that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe She-Hulk. It's a perfect story. And again, I think the problem was it was too many episodes. And what I like about Spotlight is it's like, look, like, give it a, like, what we call a mini series. Tell me everything you need to know about the character in this show. And then we've established that character. Now let's focus on an event that needs to, that character may need to continue on in that. So this is why I like the Spotlights. Now, stage 2 of this is the second thing that this show has done, which is something that I just learned recently from a lot of opinion reviews that I've watched about Echo, is that now they've solidified the Defenders universe in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that is something, from my understanding, there's a journey that's happened here leading up to Echo, and Echo is a very specific thing that that has changed something going on in the back end of Marvel. So Echo is kind of, what they're doing is they're saying, like, okay, you guys the fans love the Daredevil Netflix series. Defenders overall may not be great, but the fans still love certain parts of it, like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. There's moments, but overall, Iron Fist is probably the weakest of them all in terms of like fans loving them. Yeah. But Luke Cage season 1, people loved it. Jessica Jones season 1, people loved it. Daredevil, all 3 seasons are well represented as like the strongest. But what's happened now is now they're saying, like, boom, this is their origin stories in the Netflix series. So now it's all about events that can involve all their characters in the MCU, which has caused an interesting thing about Daredevil's Born Again. So Daredevil's Born Again originally had a plan, and because of the aggressive nature of Marvel's schedule, they're actually, because they're dialing back now, Kevin Feige has actually had breathing room to actually watch the shows and be able to say, like, look, this is not what I was hoping for. I wanted something more of this, which is why Daredevil has now been reshot for like the 3rd time. because originally they were going to kill off Foggy and Karen Page. They were going to blip, come back, die, and then Daredevil would have a conflict with Kingpin all over again. And that's why it was kind of like a born again story. So Kevin Feige was like, this is not what I want with these characters. And so this move by saying with Echo, like, hey, the Netflix series is now MCU. This is canon. This is kind of like a gift moment from Feige to the fans, saying like, here's what you want. You wanted this. I'm going to give it to you. And so now with Echo, this is where the point of interesting things happen now, is because we got your boy Big Willie in the show here doing his thing. And it's interesting because they literally kind of, and again, continued that off into the show. So that's the second thing, is that now the Defenders are in the MCU. And now Echo is kind of leading that world into the MCU, which was really cool. That was a long-winded part, but I felt like it was necessary to add.
It's okay. There's a lot of wind there that I needed to know, because I didn't grasp that from the show. I didn't grasp that they are making all of the Defenders shows part of the canon.
At first, it wasn't confirmed. Now it's been confirmed. When going into the show, it was just Daredevil. After, like, during the show's release, they confirmed the whole thing.
Like they did, somebody spoke to the press, like someone from Marvel. What did they say? They just said, "Oh, it's all canon."
Yeah, it's all canon now. I think it was Feige. Feige confirmed that all the Defenders are canon.
Interesting.
And if you look at Disney Plus now and you scroll down through like the timeline order and like this saga or whatever, if you go down, there's the Defender saga. Echo's the first one, and then it's Daredevil.
Echo's the first one. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so with Daredevil, now I don't know if this has changed because the show has changed so much, but the original Daredevil show was going to be what, 12 episodes, something crazy, like a lot.
Yeah, it was going to be like 12. Oh no, it was much more than that. It was like 18 episodes.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So that to me says that maybe that show also has Defenders in it, because I can't imagine them saying right now, the next show to hit Disney Plus is Iron Fist Returns, and people going, yay, right? So I mean, if you're going to use them, do what you just said, Ryan. Like, don't make Iron Fist season 3. Just put the next chapter of Iron Fist story inside Daredevil's story, because they got to go together for whatever reason.
Yeah, and here's the thing too, is like, Iron Fist story, to say what you will about certain scenes and like certain delivery of certain lines, but like the story is there. Like you look at the presentation of it all, that like Iron Fist is there, like the character. So now it's time to kind of like maybe, again, yes, create an event that involves Iron Fist, or oh man, I would love a Heroes for Hire kind of moment. Just you got the origin stories out of the way. Just have Luke Cage and Iron Fist in a scene, just being all like, hey, if you want us to help, you got to pay for us, kind of thing. I would love that so much. There's a great scene or a great episode in Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and it was called "To Steal an Ant-Man," and it kicks off with Iron Fist and Luke Cage, and it's like Iron Fist is like, would you believe it? The Avengers hired Power Man and Iron Fist, and then Luke Cage is like, yo, man, don't call me that. Like, it's just like it's such a perfect moment. But yeah, like at this point we don't need a story told again about these characters. We need them to be just better. That's all we need at this point. Is like, you're gonna bring in Luke Cage, awesome. Don't try to reshape his story. Make him better and bring him in. Like, just bring him in. Like, and we'll just see how that unfolds from there. Because at this point, whatever. Like, we know the story. I personally liked Luke Cage season 2. I know there's kind of a lot of people that are like, but whatever. Like, and that's the perfect part, is like, let the casting be the casting. Like, we have Mahershala, who is now Blade, but he's now played 2 characters in the MCU because he was Cottonmouth before in Luke Cage, right? And a quick side note as well with these stories is they've already been added to the overarching timeline of the MCU. So Daredevil takes place after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And then Jessica Jones follows Daredevil and then kicks off Age of Ultron. After Age of Ultron is after Ant-Man is Luke Cage and then Iron Fist. And then the Defenders take place before Civil War.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Those shows feel like so long ago. I remember really, really liking Iron Fist season 2, but I couldn't tell you anything that happens in it right now. Like I cannot. It's been completely wiped from my memory.
I can tell you. You won't like it. You won't like it, but I can tell you exactly what happened in season 2. They introduced a wicked character, which I'd love to see now, and she loves to hang out with Kingpin, which is
Typhoid Mary.
Typhoid Mary.
That's right, Typhoid Mary. Okay. Yeah, those shows, even some of the Daredevil seasons, like the problem I had with those shows is they felt like they overstayed their welcome. They were
Daredevil shows. I'm a little insulted by that statement, but that's fine.
They had so many beautiful moments, and then they would all get to this point where I'm like, wow, there's still 4 more of these, huh? Okay, right. I like the happy medium we found with like shows like Hawkeye or The Mandalorian. Like I think if you're gonna make a streaming show, that's a perfect length for it. But speaking of canon of the Marvel universe now, Ryan, I can't wait, and maybe we never will hear more about it, which I guess is fine, but I would love to learn more about what's the deal with these clay people who came out of the cave 1,000 years ago, and now they have these powers, and everybody has spiral stigmata, and I love it. I want to know what that's all about.
Yeah, this was a new angle for Echo. Actually, this is not comic. This was new kind of story arc approach. I have a feeling that was a collaboration effort with the natives, with the native nation there that they brought in to help with the production of the show. That maybe they did some creative consulting and provided this kind of unique power. But I love it too. I think it was such a unique element to the story that felt like a new kind of modern telling of a superhero origin story that we needed. Like, it kind of gives it, it really kind of brings creative power to this character that comes from an actual true source, right? And that's huge. Like to have them be able to create a narrative like that and give that character strength. I loved it, and I loved how it was seeded into the show. They didn't just over explain it right out of the gate. They didn't try to like shove it down like your throat kind of thing. It was like this character comes from an amazing culture, and we want to tell that story. And what I love about it too is that the symbolism of the ancestors and how the indigenous and the natives look at ancestry and how it channels through you kind of thing. I love that. I love that story. Oh, it's fantastic.
And you're right. It's told with such simple elegance. Like there's a mythology that goes into it.
Yes.
When you watch it, you feel like you're just watching, their people's mythology, but it never feels out of place, because what is superhero fiction but mythology kind of made flesh in the modern world? I mean, hell, look at the Thor pocket of Marvel. That's all just Norse mythology, right? So it does not feel out of place whatsoever for them to be like, here's some native mythology, and it really exists in the MCU world, and you don't even blink. You're like, yeah, cool. And then you have these like golem people, and they break. At first I thought, like, are we seeing nude people? Is that why this is Marvel Spotlight? Is that why they didn't want the kids to, like, is everybody naked? But no, they were all just made out of clay. And then they kind of free themselves from this cave and pop out. And I really felt like that is another great addition to the whole Marvel idea of, remember those stories you heard about, the god Khonshu from ancient Egypt? Well, he's real, and he's doing this over here. It was just totally a natural fit
Yes.
Beautiful stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It was a beautiful way to start. And the other thing too, it was the beautiful way to start the story with mystery. That's what I loved about it, because it kind of started with this kind of like, oh, like you know what I mean? Like it just pulls you in, and then they kick off the story of Echo, and it was so, oh my god, I loved every second of it.
And then we get in my opinion, like he is the seminal Indigenous actor. He's the man. We get Graham Greene.
Yeah.
Showing up as Echo's grandfather there.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I love that dude so much. And I've never seen him play a role where he just, like in this particular show, he looks like he's just having a blast, like he's having a good time. Usually all the roles I've seen him in, he's been very serious. He's been like downplayed. Like in The Green Mile, he's on death row. So it's like, it's not a happy movie, whatever. But in this one, it's the first time I've seen him just get to cut loose. And man, the guy's funny. He's got comedy chops. And when he's leaving the little bonfire at their house at the beginning, he's listening to Patsy Cline on his radio. So you know he's cool, because Patsy Cline is like where country music peaked, in my opinion.
Honestly, yeah, it's a really good point too. It just seems like he had such a good time. I mean, I've seen him in more unique shows, like similar to Echo, where it's more high fantasy or science fiction, because he had an episode in Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, and he plays a fun kind of mercenary kind of character in that, which is really cool.
Ooh.
Shout outs to another Canadian show, Captain Power. It was an American Canadian show, but it was a Canadian show.
I have never watched this show. Yeah.
I think I may have showed you the intro, but if you ever want to see an intro that will literally inform you exactly what the show is all about, but literally kick your ass at the same time, it is that show.
Is it a cartoon?
No, it's kind of the same kind of production as like Power Rangers, except it's, instead of switching over to like a Japanese production and cutting to that, it's all the same production. And yeah, just watch that intro. It will literally kick it will take your socks right off, just like, it's so intense. It is the most intense show I've ever seen. They only made one season because it was such a high production, but it is so good. And it got mixed up because the toys used to engage, or the toys were supposed to engage with the show. So if you bought a ship, the Captain Power ship, you could shoot at the TV screen, and it would show lasers hitting characters. It was such a crazy concept, but it didn't work. It didn't work, but it was the idea that it did. It brought all these kids in to buy the toys and try to shoot at the screen while all these like troopers were out there. Oh, it was so cool. Oh, such a good show.
I miss the 90s so much.
I know. Oh, dude, it's the epitomes of the 90s. And I'll tell you what, too, and you'll love this. You'll appreciate this. One more thing about the show that before we get back to Echo here, is that the other thing about the show is that the guy who voiced Magneto in X-Men is the villain.
What?
He plays a villain named Lord Dread, and it is so good.
What are we still doing here?
Yeah, God, I know, right? Oh man, maybe we should start a new show and just be our own like YTV VJs and just talk about all these unique shows that we've seen over the years that you need to watch today.
Well, I've been, because I think I mentioned to you that for the first time in my life, I started watching Boy Meets World because I had never seen it.
Oh, really? That's a good show too.
Because it's on Disney Plus. So I was like, let me see. I've been hearing about the show all my life, and I've never seen it, so I started watching it, and I love it. I'm not done it yet, but I discovered that 3 of the main cast members, Topanga, Eric, and Sean, they have a podcast together now. Like, they're making it as we speak in the modern day, where they're going back and rewatching it almost for the first time and being like, oh my God, we were so cringe, blah, 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 and kind of going through what it's all about. And they have a lot of guest stars on, mostly people from the show, but a lot of the guest stars, dude, they're so like, it's such a 90s time capsule. Because they'll bring on, like, hey, it's the girl from Halloween 4. Hey, it's the kid from Home Improvement. Like, it is literally like they're getting all their 90s child actor pals together and just making this nostalgic little trip.
Talk about a show though that hits you with emotional development. Oh my god, like the how they tackle emotions in that show.
I'm still on season 4.
Unrivaled.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Boy Meets World is the coolest thing since the other thing.
Yeah. Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
Yes, that one.
For viewers and for my co-host, if you have not seen the intro, at least you need to do yourself justice and watch the intro for that show. One more character I will tell you about from this show. He's the ground unit. I can't remember. His name's Tank. He is Arnold's best friend and stunt double, and he plays a pretty boss character. Like, he's a fun guy to watch.
This should have been the #1 show of all time.
Yeah. Fun fact, actually, when we went to school, this is the last cool fact about the show. So when we went to film school together, we had a film history class with Martin Lager, I believe his name was.
Yeah, that's right.
Martin
I forgot
Lager.
about him. Yeah.
He had a really beautiful, like, slick back hair look, gray hair.
Yes,
handsome dude kind of thing going, very, very smooth voice.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, though, I think he mentioned he was friends with the guy who was one of the main characters in the show, because he was talking about how it was a Canadian production. And the character is, I think the actor's name is Peter Mayhew, Matt Mayhew or something.
That's like Chewbacca. That. It can't be that.
No. Sorry. Okay. It was I'll look it up later. But anyways, the character's name is Hawk Masterson, and the actor who plays him our teacher was friends with him. And that's what got me excited, because he mentioned that he was friends with the guy. And I was like, because I knew it was Hawk Masterson, the ace pilot in the sky. Oh my God, I was so excited.
I'm sad that that's the last fun fact you have for me about that. I think every 5 minutes you should interrupt me with a new fun fact.
Fun fact is that we were 2 degrees separation from an incredible sci-fi show that was made in Canada, and that our teacher, our voice acting teacher, was the American voice of Melvin in Sailor Moon, which I still mention to this day to many people. They're all like, "Oh, I love Sailor Moon." I'm like, "Well, did you know?"
Yeah.
By knowing me, you now affiliate yourself with someone who knows Melvin.
I try to use it as a flex for my students, especially because one of my classes is a voiceover class.
Oh,
and if anybody even breathes a word about Sailor Moon in the slightest positive way, I'm like, well, you know, one of the actors trained me. So I'm just, let me just.
And not only did he train us, he took us to the studio where they dubbed it.
That's right. I forgot he did that. And there was a big Caillou poster in that studio. I remember.
They had the Sailor Moon poster with all the autographs of the.
Yes.
I wish I took a picture of that studio. Oh my God.
I don't think we had smartphones back then. We didn't have picture taking capabilities.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, technology.
You and I are olds. We're part of the olds now.
Yeah, that takes me back. I think we were still in flip phone stages there.
Yes.
Right? Yes, we did, because you had the slidey phone. You had the slidey phone with the keyboard.
Yeah. And it was a big deal.
Yeah. I have good memory for random facts like that. But anyway, speaking of random facts, let's get back to Echo.
So it's very telling, and they even call attention to it later. But I made a note in episode 1. I'm like, it's so telling that Kingpin never bothers to learn ASL, right? Every time he's got Echo with him, he's got that lady interpreting. And I'm like, what a great way of just plain and simple showing the audience what kind of person he is compared to everybody else, right? Like, he's like, I'm there for you. I'm your uncle. I love you. You mean the world to me. But meanwhile, it's this lady behind him that he's paying whatever, $100 an hour to say those things. And it sums it up, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's just get into the momentum of the show, because you're right. Like Kingpin's relationship with Echo is the center of the show. That is literally where we take off, because you have to understand, we're coming from Hawkeye, and this show did not waste any time explaining too much origin story and focusing on what just happened and where is this going. And the first episode kind of kicks off of the relationship, and it is kind of a beautiful passing of the torch from Hawkeye, is that we know Echo was like adopted by Kingpin essentially. And then in the first episode, they're like, okay, yes, she's like this boss woman who can like beat the snot out of people. And then we get right into, him, raising her essentially. And and if you look at all the characters in Echo's life, all her family members and stuff, they all learn sign language so they could all communicate with her. Like her cousin knows it, her sister, technically sister, technically cousin, knows it. Her grandma knows it. Her dad knows it. Her mom knows it. Like there's so many people in her life that know it. Her uncle knows it, that owns that awesome roller skate shop. And then Kingpin claims he's like the most loving one, and he's the only one who doesn't, which is interesting. Like he knows like little things, but he didn't like really get into it. So that's the big one. Now, what I love is the passing of the torch thing is like literally is like, okay, if you haven't seen Hawkeye, then you get introduced to like certain scenes where they left off. And it was funny because Isabella and I had that moment of like, oh yeah, like are we sure we're watching like the right episode here? Because like it felt like almost like a recap. But then they give you a little extra few minutes of what happened like the next second of that scene that we got from Hawkeye kind of thing.
Yeah, that was very cool. I was not expecting that.
But that's how you do it. That's how you do an origin story, right? Like it's like okay, you saw this. Here's a little extra thing you didn't know, and then moving on. Now, the big thing from the first episode that I like is like obviously like is like Kingpin's like, okay, you're finally ready now to be a part of what I do and how I do it. And one thing I felt they didn't do enough justice to Kingpin, and they do it a little bit in Daredevil. But one of my favorite lines from the Spider-Man cartoon was Norman Osborn looks at Kingpin, and it was a scene where he asked him to build the Spider Slayers to destroy Spider-Man. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. If you get Spider-Man or I get your company. And then Osborn looks at him and he goes, so it's either I deliver, I just realized something. It's either I deliver you Spider-Man or you get Oscorp. Either way, you win. Right. And he's like, that's why I'm the Kingpin. And in this show, there doesn't seem to be moments where he has a true like win-win for him either way. And I feel like they need to take that to the next level. And this is where I kind of feel like Echo could have been that, is that like instead of the final conflict that we saw, I would love to see her finally get the one up on Kingpin that no one else could. Like, you know what I mean? Like Daredevil has that moment at the end of Daredevil. He like literally just
that ending did her dirty.
Yeah, the ending was not as great. Isabella cameo moment here, MCU.
The first 4 episodes, even the first 4.5 episodes.
Yeah,
I highly enjoyed. That was no.
Yeah, there you go. That's our episode today, people. Isabella just summed it up perfectly for me. That is exactly how.
Too badass of a character. It was too.
Yeah, I mean that's all I need to say.
They're putting that quote on the Disney Plus homepage as we speak.
He said he's putting that quote in Disney. Just.
It was just there was so much effort. It was such a beautiful story. There was such a detail of so many things, and then that's how they ended. Like, oh.
This is why you need to cameo every episode and have like your summary review, because your Iron Man 2 one still is today the best summary with censor.
I want my board.
Isabella really is the Stan Lee of our podcast.
She is the Stan Lee of our show. But going back to it, the first episode kicks it off so strong. But this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about with the MCU. The first episode, when she's all taking out all the goons and everything and doing like what Echo does best is, and like she like takes them all out and she's finally getting the hang of it. Like, oh yeah, I'm here to kill people because like, I need to channel my anger kind of thing. And who walks in? And spoiler for a moment if you haven't watched it, but I feel like, again, Marvel fans, if you're going to watch it, you should have watched it by now. You kick down the door, and it's freaking Daredevil. Daredevil interrupts the fight, and that is how you do it. That is how Marvel should be right now, every single episode. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It should feel like a wrestling match at this point. You get one match, and you're like, oh, man, look at them take out all these goons. Then you level up the fight by cameoing in another character and like just jumping right into the fight scene. There doesn't need to be like a dialogue moment. No, these characters are all action all the time. So for her to have this crazy fight scene and then Daredevil just do his thing to fly in, you're like, oh my God. Like, oh man, it is the best. It is so good. That fight scene is so amazing. I would love to break it down. I'd love to do like the variety where the director like has a pen and like scribbles in moment. Like that's how you do fight scenes in Marvel nowadays, people. You don't just have this goon fight. We know goon fights. We love goon fights. But if you're going to do a goon fight, you need to spice it up, throw other characters in. That's why She-Hulk, if you didn't put in Daredevil in there in the first place, the surprise would have been that much better. If you just freaking dropped in and you have this moment of like, what the hell? And especially, too, if you had Matt Murdock in the first scene and you didn't show him the trailer and he comes in and does his court thing and She-Hulk's fighting goons later and then he appears. That's how you do it. That is how you do a superhero fight scene, people. That is how you do an episode on these Disney Plus series. You should have characters coming in left and right, front and center. Why wasn't Moon Knight fighting vampires, like weird vampires, and then having Blade jump in? Like, we should be well into that kind of stuff by now.
Yeah, I actually, to my benefit, I totally forgot that Daredevil was supposed to be in this show. Completely forgot about it. So when he crashed in, it was mega surprise. I was like, oh yeah, that's it. It was just in, just melatonin. Is that the right thing? What's the thing that's like pleasure? Is that
dopamine.
Dopamine. Thank you. I don't know where I'm going.
Melatonin is the thing that helps you sleep.
That's it. That's the thing I don't have. But dopamine, I have plenty. Yeah, that's what it was. It was just dopamine. But most importantly, that's the way you do it, because he showed up, he got a pop, he made us happy, but he didn't overshadow Echo because it's her show.
Yeah.
He came in and had his moment with her, and then he boogied, and that's it. And it's not like she spent the rest of the show being like, who was that intriguing stranger? No, she's got her own stuff, right? So it's for us, but it doesn't overshadow Maya, because if it did, it would do a disservice to the show. And I think that's beautiful. That's a picture perfect way to throw in a cameo. It felt like in the Maximum Carnage game when you press the button to make like another hero come in and help you.
Yeah,
right? It's exactly what it felt like.
But there was story to it too, because when he came in, he's like, "Do you know how long I've been stalking this place?"
Mm-hmm.
And you guys just came in and ruined it all. Like, that was perfect, because now he's been watching, he's been listening, and then the whole thing happens, and it's perfect. And let's just talk about the fight in general, like, and talking about Aquila here doing her like one of my favorite shots. And I don't remember the exact second it happens, but it's when she fights Daredevil before she jumps into the weapon cage. She does this kick where she holds her kick in the air, waiting for him to get up, and then snaps it down on him. Oh my God. Oh, I craved. I literally watched, when I first saw that episode, I must have watched that fight scene about 2 or 3 more times, because that is to me, that is a Marvel comic moment that we've only seen so many times. Like, especially in like, all of like the Infinity Saga, there are some solid comic book moments, and it's like Civil War's got like at least a dozen of them. But that's where this is the level we need to be at, people. And so the story kicks off so strong. And then I love like Kingpin's like, "Oh, I see you fought him. Like, you lasted a lot longer than anyone else has." Like, yes, hit me with more of that. Just keep that train going. I loved it.
Yeah, that was a beautiful surprise. Well done cameo. And then she gets all hurt, and she's all banged up. But she goes back and does her thing. And then eventually we catch up past Hawkeye. We catch up to the present, where Kingpin has been shot. She assumes he's dead, and she goes off, and now we're caught up, and she has come to Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got a bullet in her, because she's just living that dangerous life. And she finds her old house and crashes there. And the first thing she does is get some dental floss to patch up her wound. And
Mint.
Yes, that's the note I took. I was like, that is peppermint dental floss. That is going to sting like a bastard.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But I guess that's all she had available. A lot of stuff like that.
So when she goes back to the town, this is where I think is the best way to do kind of nowadays origin stories, is because she is now in an environment that educates you constantly of her backstory. It is all the relationships she talks to, everything is there. And it's not like, oh, we're going to tell you how she knows her cousin. It's not that. What it is like, she's here. This is her cousin. This is where their relationship is at currently. So there's a lot of that going on as she's in the town. What the origin story part of it is how the ancestry is involved. And they do some kind of really cool things they embed throughout the series. But what I love about this way of doing an origin story is like, hey, this is the cousin. Cousin comes in, he's like, I haven't seen you in a while. Oh, grandma's going to be excited. I can't wait to, and he's like this super friendly guy. And I think it's Biscuits. And he's like, yeah, like, oh, it's so good to see you. And then he becomes like the errand runner for her. I love it. And there are a lot of scenes I do enjoy when he's in it. He's a fun comic relief character, kind of like the Foggy of Daredevil. You know what I mean? But I loved it. And again, it was perfect. It was like, this is this character. This is where the relationship's at. Let's continue from here. And then the uncle is the key story, the kind of the secondary story here, because the uncle is the bridge between, her relationship with Kingpin, but he also works for Kingpin shipping. So this is another thing I love to see in this environment, is that how big is Fisk's influence in the world?
Yeah, I love that character, the uncle.
Yeah,
he was like my second favorite character in the show. He was so fun. And yeah, I was shocked to see that Fisk had a warehouse this far out in Oklahoma. So at first you think, oh, she's running away from that world and just going back home. But no, she's just going after Fisk stuff, right? She's there because there's Fisk stuff there to get rid of.
Yeah.
And I have a note that kind of is a perfect segue from this episode into the second episode, because it applies to both of them.
Yeah.
And my note is, I want to meet somebody who looks at me the way Maya looks at her grandmother's pickup truck. I was like, is this going to be a love story between Maya and the truck? She cannot take her eyes off that truck. Like Biscuits pulls up, he's like, hey, I brought you food. And she's like, man, look at this flatbed. And she's like I was like, should we leave these two alone? What's going on with Maya on the truck?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she loved that truck. But obviously that was the foreshadowing of what she was planning on doing. Now this is where I think the story is kind of interesting. So both interesting and like there's a lot of potential that they could have done with this, and I don't not like it, but it's like I'll settle with that. Like I'll settle with the choice they made, but I love where it was going. So what I love is the nickname they gave her, which is the King Killer. I love that.
Yes.
Oh, I was all for it. But she loves the truck because, of course, she goes out to raid Fisk's shipping. And I love the story because I love that she's sabotaging Fisk's shipping and all that stuff. And this guy's like, what are you doing? Like, oh my God, like, you're messing with this and there's going to be a big power vacuum, blah, 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 blah. And I love how she's like, oh, we need a queen, right? Because this is the world she knows. She knows the world of like, leading a crime syndicate, essentially. And yeah, but I love the sabotage the train scene. Sabotaging the armory through the train thing. I love that. It was so fun to watch.
That train scene was so much fun.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about it just felt very like a classic Spielbergian action scene. And Biscuits is trying to keep up in the sexiest truck of all time, according to my it's just
Yeah, and it's funny too because he's like, I've never driven it off road before. Like the way they use foreshadowing in this was really funny. Like he's like, I've never done. I need to be back home for dinner and all this stuff. It's so good. And then they go on this epic chase for this train, and who doesn't love a good train chase scene? I mean, you can always have fun with this. But I love that she's like, oh, tracker, and he's like, what do I need a tracker for? It's just like. Oh, it's so fun, so good.
And the opening. Sorry, hold on. Where's my note here? the opening of episode 2, where we meet another ancestor of Maya's, I had a brain fart, Ryan.
Oh, did you?
I forgot that the sport of lacrosse exists. I'm watching this play out, and they're having this big sports thing, and I was loving it. I'm like, oh, cool. Let's see what they're doing. What's this big cultural game they're playing, she's using her superpowers, and that big guy comes out of the tent, and I'm like, this is all great. I love this. And then afterwards, like, I'm finished the episode, and I'm going to sleep, and the next morning I'm like, I wonder what that sport was. I want to look it up and find out more about it. And then I do a quick Google search, and I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. That is called lacrosse. It's definitely a bit different than the lacrosse that I'm used to. It looks very hard because those sticks are tiny, and so is that ball. So that takes a hell of a lot of skill. But I love that, just how they threw in that giant quasi-pyramid in the middle of North America to show just how long ago this is. This is still taking place way back in the day. And it's another one of her ancestors digging into her powers. And yeah, I love that flashback so much.
Oh, I loved it as well. I just love that, all this like immersion into culture. It's just such a great way to do it. And it's funny. I actually knew it was lacrosse because I went on a field trip a long time ago as a kid, and they're like, "Oh, this is and it was exposure to indigenous culture," and they were showing that they're showing the evolution of lacrosse. And thanks, I gotta give props to that field trip person. This is like, when am I ever gonna need to know this? And then here we are today.
So back then,
God, history is paid off.
So they taught you about how like it used to be different with the little tiny sticks.
Yeah, they showed me the sticks and everything.
Wow. So are you a professional lacrosse player now?
No, God. You know how violent lacrosse is?
If it's anything like this episode, I can imagine.
If you've ever watched lacrosse today, oh my God, it is a violent sport. And I'll tell you something, okay? There's men's lacrosse, which is violent. Then there's women's lacrosse, which is even more violent. And let me tell you, it is brutal. It is a very, very intense sport that is very physical. And yeah, it takes a lot of skill. I appreciate it from a distance. I would never want to be in a game or a ring. But I have to give them props, and I'll tell you why. Because that game was to settle who is to stay in that territory. That is how you do it, people. You play out a game. You do it through a game, all right? You don't need to do these epic battles. We need to sort this out in sports.
You don't got to hurt anybody. Just settle like that, right?
Just healthy competition. That's the way to do it.
If Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin have a disagreement, get them in a room, put them in front of a cabinet for like Street Fighter 2 Turbo Arcade, and just winner gets what he wants.
That's how my brother and I settle disputes all the time. We just got heated up, and we're like, we're going to put this in Street Fighter. And then we win. That was the best way to settle disputes, man. Oh my God. But that's how you do it. That was a really cool thing. But yeah, I love that. And what's interesting too, so the uncle plays a kind of a fun narrative of like tying together her culture, where she's from and her family, and then the Fisk angle, and really bridging the gap there. And I really appreciated that. And then the other part of it is that, the ancestor story. And what was really interesting was I love the one about the lawmakers. I can't remember what they were called, but I loved that story and the way it was portrayed. It kind of reminded me when they did the Iron Fist one, they kind of showed the original Iron Fist, and they did the black and white film. But yeah, oh my God, I love it. Love that.
That was the episode 3 one where it was like the Old West.
Yeah, it was the Old West. Yeah. And then she like wanted to be like a lawmaker like her dad. And he's like, no. And then she ends up proving herself being like one of the best ones and having the best shot. I love it. And it kind of adds into the layers of Echo's character. I just loved it. That was the way to do it.
And it's more old-timey Marvel powers stuff, which I like to see. I like to see that way back in the day, there were people with powers too.
Yeah.
Fun fact. So Echo's uncle, whose name I believe is Black Crow. I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Black Crow, the guy who owns the roller. So over here at the Bramley City Center Mall, right near where I live, They just opened, Ryan, a retro roller rink.
Oh my god.
And I haven't seen it operating. I've seen like I peeked through the window and it was dark and everything, but it looks like it has the same aesthetic as Black Crow's place. So
Amazing.
when it opens, I'm gonna go in there and be like, whoa! I'm just gonna run around screaming and saying, I love it in here, and they'll kick me out. I will be escorted out by security, but it'll be worth it.
His name was Henry Black Crow Lopez.
Henry Black Crow Lopez. Thank you. Yeah, that's right, because she's Maya Lopez. Yeah. But yeah, we have a roller rink here now.
Oh, that's amazing. I used to live near one myself. It was called Roller Palace. It was a great place. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But oh yeah. Anyways, great. And I like the fight. Okay, so the fight scene in the Roller Palace. So Echo. First of all, you could tell that dude when he texted people, he's like, "Yeah, I found the King Killer. I'll lock it in." Then we get the weird guy that runs the armory. That actor, I love that actor, but man, his character was just so bizarre.
The bald dude?
Yeah, the bald dude.
I spent like 45 minutes just trying to figure out what accent he had.
Yeah, that's why I found him very bizarre. But okay, so he was a weird one. So when they capture her, though, I really, oh my god. I love the situations they put Maya in, because they always talk about raising the stakes and all this stuff, and I love she avoids her kind of sister / cousin character, and so they kidnap her, and they're gonna send her off to these guys, and so. I love the fight scene in the roller rink. It is so fun. I don't think they needed, Maya to have build this essentially a fake gun and shoot. I don't think she needed that. I think it would have been cooler if she was all stealth and dagger and just took people out hand to hand, because that's how her character really shines. And I loved seeing that. But I guess you needed a reason to get her out of that room. Talking about characters, talking about raising the stakes for characters and putting them in situations. One thing I love about superhero shows is that, one thing in acting they always talk about is raising the stakes. And this character, Maya Lopez, avoids her sister, essentially at all costs while she's back in town. Yeah. Tells everyone not to, don't let her know I'm here. And what happens is she ends up finding out through biscuits, which is hilarious. And then she goes to the palace, and then they're put in a room together while Maya's being taken, essentially, which is really cool. That was a really good moment.
Yes. And not only that, what I loved about that was the fact that, she's avoiding Bonnie. She's like, I don't want to talk to Bonnie. Don't tell her I'm here, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then finally, outside forces, fate has thrown them into the same room together.
Yeah.
And obviously Bonnie has a lot to say, and maybe Maya has a lot to say too, but they're both held hostage, so both of them have their hands tied behind their back, so they can't communicate.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so cool.
Exactly. There's so many cool angles of that, so many layers to it, which is so awesome. So I absolutely love that as well. And then when she breaks out and takes them all down, I love that she comes through the wall. I'm a big ever since Spider-Man No Way Home, there is no excuse to not do enough going through wall scenes. These superheroes are insanely strong. And so let them be strong. When Willem Dafoe essentially power bombs Spider-Man through the floor, and he goes through an entire floor. Yes, these are super strong characters, people. We need more of this. So when Echo took the guy through the wall and came out through the wall, I was like, oh my God, yes. And I love that she took the arcade and used the guns as the whips.
Oh my God, was that ever cool?
So anyways, that fight scene's amazing as well. The fight scenes in Echo are just beyond amazing. Whoever that choreographer is, keep them going. Just keep them going. And what I love about it is it's all master shots. They're all shots that are further out, they're further back, and they don't cut away too early. Every fight scene is a full move. And it lands. Usually if an actor doesn't know how to fight, or they're not well trained in fighting, what they'll do is they'll show the punch going and they'll cut to the reaction of the person getting the punch.
Right.
So you don't see the full movement. It's very disconnected.
That's what they would have to do with me, because I cannot do that. I would be too afraid of hurting anybody. Like, I'm sorry, just film around me.
But like, but what's cool when you really dedicate the time to doing like really good fight scenes and you get the performers up to a level where they can pull it off, you get some really cool fight scenes. But a good example of how not to do it is watch The Firstborn Identity. Matt Damon is a very good actor, but he wasn't a good like physical performer in terms of fighting. And all his fight scenes are really awkward because they're very like sets up the move and then it's cut and then the guy gets knocked out, right? Like you just see the reaction of the guy getting hit. So you miss a lot of like the full punch movement, and it's really gross. It's really gross. It's not like a great way to do a fight scene. But all Echo's fight scenes, they're further back where you can see all the action and you see all the movements. And like the first fight scene, the first big fight scene in the first episode, and that fight scene in the roller rink is amazing. I wanted nothing but more of it. I was hoping that like the fight with Kingpin would have something that epic, but it didn't. It was like, because Kingpin, like when he throws the ice cream guy into the garbage can, just beats the snot out of him. I was like, oh man, I cannot wait for him and Echo to throw down. Like, let's go. Let's see this. And that's interesting too, because it leads us to the moment where, you know, Kingpin, where she finally sees that he's alive. And that's a crazy scene. Like he's just like the tension that Vincent brings in every scene of just like the how scary this man is. And like, you never want to be on the other side of the table with this man. Like you either want to be with him or you just don't want to be in the room. Like you don't, like, this is a scary dude. But yeah, like, so he comes in and we get the scene of the father-daughter, well, the uncle-niece kind of thing.
Now, this is one of the small points that I would say work against this show, Ryan, is this whole idea of what happened to Kingpin here.
Yeah.
Like, you all know, I am, you know, the more Kingpin, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Give me all the big Willie Fisk. I'm so happy to see him here in full force, even though he wasn't wearing white as much as I would have wanted, but that's okay. You can save the white for when he fights Spider-Man.
He asked for a white suit after the full beatdown of that poor ice cream guy.
Yeah, he had the white suit for a bit, yeah.
He even asked for a new one, bro. He's like, I need a new white suit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm always happy to see him. However, I am positive, you know, there will not be a point in the MCU where him having been shot in the eye is going to have any consequences. And I am of the mind, like, I don't like the idea of fake out deaths for tension. You know, basically what I'm trying to say is your intention was always to have Kingpin live. Great. So don't shoot him in the face. Because now you have this ridiculous, and I know, you know, we buy superpowers, we buy all kinds of crazy things, we buy gods and trolls and whatever, but just shoot him in the chest. Like, you know, it's back to the old Obi-Wan thing. If you want your character to live, don't stab them through the gut with a lightsaber. You can knock them out in a variety of more creative ways. Echo could have shot him in the heart. He could have been wearing, like, whatever. There's plenty of ways you can believably say, like, yeah, man, he's Kingpin. He got he got through that. He was in a coma, but he got through that. But in the eye, like, why? Just because they did it in the comics? Comics don't care about death. They've made that very clear. Comics treat death with utter disrespect. That's one of the main reasons why I can't get into comics as much. So just find another more believable way, especially because this is a guy who, at the end of the day, does not have any superpowers. Why do it in the eye? Like, it really doesn't make sense to me.
I agree. I think the best way to get around it would have been if the bullet, like, if he grabbed her arm before, like, as she was about to shoot, like, because, like, what I love about that moment is he's convinced that she may not shoot him, and she's convinced she's going to shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that beautiful tension there of like, is she going to do it? And Isabella brought up a good point, and she didn't mention this during her brief rant there, but there was way too many moments for her to shoot him. And it really took away the illusion of power that Kingpin has over her. Because like he just keeps coming in like, oh, you're my niece, you're not going to shoot me. And like there's way too many moments for her to get him. And I'm not convinced that she withheld enough restraint to, like, this is a guy who killed her dad, and she gets so many opportunities to take him out. But I agree with you with the shooting in the eye. But I think what should have happened, and it would have really transformed the relationship and the power that Kingpin has, is that she was about to shoot him and he still was able to like get the gun out of the way. And then maybe the bullet like ricocheted and like, you know, maybe like scraped him a little bit, but like nothing to a point where it literally like bang and like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, like even reflecting on it, like the gun, the being shot in the eye thing, like, yeah, I'm just so confused. I'm so confused about what kind of damage it did. And besides like the physical, besides how it looks on him. But yeah, I'm still confused about how it did, like what it did to him. You know what I mean?
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre, yeah. And I hope they find a way to just clean it up and give him like his original look back. Like, you know what I mean? Like because like it's just gonna be weird him having the scar and like missing an eyebrow for like the entire rest of his time as Kingpin goes. You know what I mean? Like I hope he retains most of his look and there's just like a small like scar on his eye, I guess. But like, yeah, I just felt it was weird. And then, so this is also where like, you know, kind of as we get to the end here and wrap up Echo's story, this is the other part that was weird for me, was like, he brings her in. I love the scene where he talks about the hammer and talks about that he had to make a difficult decision, but for him to say like, we're the same, it's not like he killed his dad and killed her dad. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, she had a great relationship with her dad. That was fine.
Yeah, it's not. There is no point of contention there. It's, and that's the weird part. It's like almost like he was trying to make her say, like, look, if you're gonna kill me, look, I'm okay with that because that's what made me the man I am today. And that's what I think that's what they were trying to do, was that like he's becoming, because she lost her dad, despite it being him that did it, he's like, I'm your dad now, right? Like I know you see me as a father figure kind of thing. But the problem is, and I think the major problem is here, that like they kind of skipped a major part of Echo's comic story, which is like Kingpin like made her think Daredevil did it. And then when that failed, he would try to put it somewhere else. He'd like, oh, someone else did it. And then she would just got like sick of like chasing down and realized it was Kingpin the whole time.
Right.
But Kingpin took it far. Like Kingpin said Daredevil did it, and then she through like her trying to go after Daredevil, she ends up running into Matt and she starts dating Matt, and there's a whole story there, and Kingpin realizes that, and then, you know, tries to get her closer to Matt, and then thus hoping that she realizes Daredevil, and then like really goes after him kind of thing. But that ends up backfiring, and then she realizes this is Kingpin, leading up to the gun shooting in the face, and that's the end of Kingpin. But I think because they started so strong with Hawkeye and her having that moment, it kind of made the conflict. It kind of stretched out this conflict between her and Kingpin in a weird way. It gave it too much breadth of room, and like I said, there was way too many moments for her to get the one up on him, because she's so close to him. If she was like, look, I know it's you. I know you did it. Like, I need to stop you, right? And it's like, there wasn't enough of like, I don't know. There wasn't enough like resistance on that. And like, I didn't believe that she could hold herself back to do it. That's what I think was missing. I couldn't believe that.
I wonder if there's something that the show didn't communicate, where I wonder if, you know, maybe he trained her to do some fighting things while they were growing up, and maybe, you know, because Kingpin can fight too. Maybe he was always been able to overpower her,
Yeah.
And so she has that fear, like, I can't take him hand to hand. So
Yeah.
like with the gun, I'm fine, but maybe she has that fear. But if so,
that was actually the way I was looking to see that's how it should have been done.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't get me wrong, like that everything up until that last conflict. So the dinner is fun and whatever. There's a good moment there. And I thought it was funny she poured out the wine. That was hilarious. But like the last scene where the big fight scene happens, she gets her family together. They're all going to help her, and all this stuff. And but that last fight scene, I love how the ancestor, like everything comes together for her to be who she is and really embrace that. I'm all for that. I love that. I love that hero moment. When the hero self-actualizes and realizes what they can be. That's what I live for.
Yeah.
That's what I live for in every comic book story, people. That's how you do it. That's a modern storytelling right there. But I didn't like the healing thing that she did to him because like it didn't resolve anything. It was kind of like a Disney ending in the sense of like, I'm teaching you the power of love and you need to forgive yourself and we need to stop all this cycle of getting one-ups on each other or whatever. And it's like, I don't know if that's the way you need to walk away strong. I don't know who made that creative decision. Maybe there's a message there that I'm not seeing. And I do respect the choice that they made, but I don't feel like it was a way to beat the character. And as if any writer outside of yourself, sir, is watching the show and is like, oh, I need to see how these guys are talking about it. Look, whenever I say beat the character, I don't mean you have to kill them. You have to prove that the character is better than that person. And this whole like teaching Kingpin love thing, I don't think that's the way to do it. That's not the way Kingpin's gonna like be like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I made some bad choices in my life. That's not how he's gonna resolve it. No. She needs to prove, like you said, like if she always had to fight him hand to hand and she couldn't do it because it's him, it's like this figure in her life and like, aside from a gun, like she can't do it. And she actually physically was able to like best him and like prove she's strong that way. I would like something like that. Like I really would. But yeah, I just, the whole healing thing, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like it was a great way to resolve this conflict between the two of them. It didn't resolve the conflict between the two of them. And I loved how he walked away. Like, what did you do? But like, it didn't, I don't know why it like just made her like, you know what it felt like? It kind of felt like the Ghost Rider pen and stare in the original Ghost Rider, where he like would grab somebody and then you'd look through his eyes and he would make you feel the pain of all the innocence that you've killed and like the lives you've taken. You feel the pain amplified of all the lives you've taken and put back in you. So I don't know if that's what she did to him, but it didn't resolve the conflict. That's what I feel like. Yeah, that's what I'm going to leave it as. I love the show all the way up until that last conflict, and then I love the ancestors all coming in and her self-actualization. Loved all of that, but to stop the Kingpin, I just didn't buy it. I did not buy it.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, like the ending of Kingpin's story here. Let me roll it back a little bit first. The dinner.
Yeah.
The dinner I felt was teeing up something really, really special, and then it didn't deliver on that. First of all, he comes in with that contact lens, and again, it's a great example of I would rather spend probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on this thing than learn ASL.
Yeah.
That's how much I don't really love you as much as I say I do, right? Again, great way of showing what his true colors are. But they tee up this thing where he goes inside her house. Yeah, she pours out the wine and he's like, I brought dinner. And I felt like we were like getting prepped, Ryan, for like the opening scene of Inglourious Basterds with Hans Landa sitting at the table.
Oh,
and
yes.
you know he's in control and he's having milk with them and he's talking about whatever. And you know he's got an evil agenda. I felt like we were being teed up for that with Kingpin sitting down to break bread with his adopted niece. And, you know, she would be sitting there and there would be this tension that you could cut with a knife where she's just like looking around like, can I kill him with that? Can I kill him with that? Can he kill me with this? Right? And I was ready for that, man. I was so stoked to see that happen, because what a great way to do an intense scene where nobody even has to throw a punch, right? And then in a very, what I feel, a very un-Kingpin-like way, he brings her food and then he leaves and he doesn't even eat. He's like, I brought us dinner. Let's have dinner together. Okay, here's the basket full of dinner. Okay, bye. And then he just left her house. I mean, I know she's not exactly making him feel welcome, but when has that ever stopped Kingpin before, right? Like that's the thing. You sit there and you eat, and you're like, "How's the food, right?"
Yeah, like with his visit with Ulrich, Ben Ulrich, he wasn't welcome there, but he sure made himself feel welcome.
Yeah, right. Like there's such a powerful villain moment to be had there, and then he just dips. He just leaves the house, and it fell so flat to me after that. I'm like, why did he say, I brought us dinner?
Yeah.
And then at the end of it all, in that final battle where she does a little thing to him, the penance there is a great example. I was thinking of, there's a book series, a fantasy book series called Inheritance. They made a movie about it. The first book was Aragon. They made a movie about Aragon.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember the guy who writes the Blue Dragon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna spoil the ending.
I've seen it. I've seen the movie.
But like the ending of the whole thing of like.
Yeah. Okay.
So if people have not read Inheritance, because the bad guy, he's the king. He's an evil king, and he's been alive for hundreds of years, and he's the most powerful magician in the world. Because basically, the older you get, the more powerful you get, and he has managed to, like, protect himself from any kind of physical or magical attack because he's lived so long and he knows. So it's like the whole time it's like it's impossible to kill this guy. He's running the world forever. We can't get him. And at the very end, he's got Aragon in his clutches, and there's this big battle in his throne room, whatever. And Aragon defeats him by casting a spell that is not an attack, but it's a spell of, I forget how they word it, but he makes the king feel all of the emotional trauma that his actions have made other people feel. And the king is over 100 years old. That's a lot of emotional trauma he's caused to a lot, millions of people in the kingdom. So he does that. He casts that spell on the king. And because the king can only think in terms of people want to hurt me, he's shielded from attacks, but this is not an attack. So it gets through and it stopped, and it basically makes him go crazy, and he fries his brain, whatever, and he dies. And I thought that's what they were going for here. And that's what it kind of reminded me of. And I think it does do the job of, like you said, Ryan, Maya showing I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Maybe not in a physical way, but like, these are my people and their powers in me now. And we have been through so much, killing and whatever and all this and all that. I mean, when it comes to indigenous people, they have felt that worse than any other like group of people of like just unnecessary violence. So I was like, okay, she's going the non-violent route. That's really, really cool. I dig this. And the idea of her saying, that's how I'm better than you, because you're a person who can only run around and hurt people to get what you want.
That makes that parts of the story makes sense to me, yes. But I'll agree with you up till that point. But yes, continue. Sorry.
So I'm like, I like how that this is her idea of stopping him. But what I don't like is that it goes and it ends everything with this weird fizzle. You could have had that exact same thing happen. You could have had Echo do this to Kingpin. And if done emotionally correctly on screen, we would have been like, yeah, like, woo, standing ovation. That was done so well. But the fact that Kingpin is just sitting there kind of angrily, he's like, what did you do? What did you do? And then he just kind of slinks off back to his car and goes home. That didn't feel like a victory. That didn't feel like Maya won.
Yeah.
It just kind of felt like Maya stopped.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what they were going for, is I'm not here to win a fight, I'm here to stop a fight, in which case, cool. But
it didn't communicate that. Like
it did not communicate that, no.
you're like, that's the thing. It just left us. It left us with something unresolved. Like it didn't like. There's no end here. It just like it just stops something, but there's no end. It just like it's in a big battle scene. There's you have one army versus another, and they're both duking it out, and then something makes them stop, and then they look to what that something is, and then the story continues on. That's what happened, except we don't know what that piece is to continue on. Something made them stop, but that's it. Like they stopped. Like, okay, like good, I guess. But you're right. One key thing that helps the story all the way through is that the start of the series is Kingpin says it. You need to channel that anger. You need to put it out there, and that's how you're going to get what you want in this world. Boom. Ending is no. Echo stops the anger, and she needs to build bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And she rediscovers herself, her culture, her family, ties it all together, finds her history. Love all that. That's beautiful. But to stop Kingpin, I just didn't feel that. I didn't feel any resolution or like that clapping moment, like, yeah, like the penance stare thing. Like, I don't know what happened. And yeah, like you said, he just drives off. He just leaves. Yeah. Like, what does that mean? Like, is he going to leave the town alone? I don't think so. Like,
no, I don't think he is. It's a great way to give Echo, to give Maya rather, a closing arc. It's a great way of her embracing her family and their roots and embracing the path of like, I'm not going to be violent anymore. Yeah. I don't want that anymore. I'm going back to what I was supposed to be, which is a happy, healthy person in this family of happy, healthy people. Yeah. And that's beautiful. That's great. So like 10 out of 10 full marks for her arc. But they were just missing like a beat of, I don't know, that house they're in, whatever, all the fighting makes it, the rubble collapse on Kingpin, and they, that's how he gets away. Something instead of just like, what'd you do? Okay, bye.
Yeah. Like Echo the character story arc. You're right. Check mark there. Beautifully executed all the way through. Love it. Right? Kingpin story arc within this, the villain story arc. All there. Love it. Great stuff. But the conflict part, it's unresolved. There's no check mark here because like it's just stopped. It just stopped. That's all I can say. But speaking of, so let's talk about the villain story arc for a second there. So it ends with him on the plane waiting for Echo to join him, or like waiting for, despite this whole healing thing, like he's still waiting for her to come on the plane. She doesn't show.
Oh, that's after. He's waiting on the plane before, and then he freaks
out.
Oh,
yeah. No, sorry, yeah. No, but he's on the plane after the battle. Yeah, sorry, I mixed that up.
Yeah.
He's on the plane after the battle, and he's like, okay, well, I'm leaving. Like, whatever that means. I'm leaving. And then they do this segment about, they need a candidate to be the mayor of New York. And this is perfect because this could set up the Thunderbolts. I think this will, and we talked about this actually in a very long time ago, when they first announced the Thunderbolts. We talked about how they can do Dark Avengers and do this whole thing. And the key to Dark Avengers was Norman Osborn becomes like essentially like the president or something like that. But now I think Kingpin is going to be that character. He's going to take over because, I mean, they spell it out for you practically in that scene. They're like, we need somebody to really take a strong arm and really, beat up these people and really take, like we get it. Like there was a big, I get it moment in that entire speech. And like, you get it. Like when they're like, they could have literally just like, hey, we just need a really new aggressive candidate. And you could stop talking at that point because anything after that, like they might as well have just been like, hey, Wilson Fisk, can you send your resume? Like, because it was like, he's like, yeah, we really need someone to really throw in their gloves, roll up their sleeves, and just beat the crap out of these people and give us a new aggressive edge and like someone new, someone who's really seen some gritty things. And it's like we get it. Like
that dialogue was hilarious. We really needed just a candidate here, John. Even if that candidate is a bald crime lord. Even if he's been shot in the eye and he's a bald crime lord named Wilson Fisk, we'll take him.
I loved it. Don't get me wrong. If you ended that end credit sequence on like, hey, Like, we need a new aggressive candidate that, really gets, New York. You know what I mean? And that's perfect, because if you've watched Daredevil, it was literally Matt's version of New York, his New York versus Kingpin's New York. They both were fighting for the direction of the city and what the city needs. And all they needed to say in that end credit sequence was, hey, we need a new, bold, aggressive candidate who knows what New York needs. And literally leave it at that, and then shot on Kingpin. Done. Mm-hmm. End credit sequence, trailer for Daredevil Born Again. There you go. There it is. But no, you're like, new aggressive candidate who's willing to roll up his sleeves, beat the snot out of people, and wear a white suit while doing it. Let's go. Give me Wilson Fisk.
Now, what I hope is that the next time we see Kingpin, the actions here, unlike the gunshot to the eye, the actions here are going to have more consequences for him. So, play the long game. Whatever Maya did to him, the Care Bear stare, is going to have an effect down the road.
Yeah.
And he's going to be about to make a decision that hurts people, and maybe he stops and second guesses himself because of what she did. And then that sets off a whole other chain of things. That would redeem this ending in a much more satisfying way. Even, as clumsy as it was to get him out of that house and back into his SUV with just no repercussions, fine, but that would at least help, I think, soften that blow. And then it'd be like, okay, yeah, they're playing the long game, which I have the utmost respect for.
Yep. I'm just going to chalk it up to, hey, if we look at the scoreboard here, Maya's story, check mark.
Beautiful.
Kingpin story, check mark. Boom, done. Great stuff. Conflict, no check mark there. Like, it's just because it's just like not resolved. But I loved everything else. Everything else about the show, amazing. All that culture exposure, loved it. Mythology, loved it. All there, check marks all across the board. That last fight scene, the big crescendo of the whole thing, is just left with so much to be desired for. And that made me go, and that's unfortunately is where a lot of people's problems are coming in with that show. And and it's really unfortunate, because in the end, this is a great Marvel spotlight. As Kevin Feige said, it is comics reminiscent of Marvel Knights, which I love that he used that vernacular. And yeah, it's a great way to do new shows with characters. Don't give me like She-Hulk season 2 or whatever. Give me a spotlight. Let me know what the character is. Now give me events that's going to tie that character all in with everything else. That's all I need. That's all I need at this point. I want those wrestling matches. Give me the WrestleManias of Daredevil and Echo versus Kingpin. Punisher and Punisher versus Echo. All these things. That's what we need to see. That's what we want. We are tired of someone explaining to us who the next mayor is and essentially telling us every single detail aside from the name of the person and telling them that they're going to be the next mayor. We don't need to know that. What we need is just give us the event and then tell us who's going to play in the event and then let us watch that wrestling match.
I guarantee if we could have been able to see those two people on the news in that final scene, they would have been winking at the camera excessively. In terms of thematic storytelling, I think the people who made this show understood exactly what they wanted to say, and they said it beautifully, which is you have at the center of everything just Maya choosing between the two worlds of her life, right? The world of her family and the world of her family. And there's so many beautiful shorthand ways they used to really create a disparity between the two. Kingpin not learning sign as one of them, right? And I think one of my favorite examples was they beautifully illustrate the difference between Kingpin and the grandmother. Because Kingpin's always saying, I love you, I care about you, come back to me. The grandmother spends the whole show saying, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. And we know it's the opposite. we know who the good person is here, right? And they illustrated so well with cookies. This Kingpin comes up, he comes rolling up to her house with his basket of dinner that he never eats, and he's like, "You still like this cookie place? Is this still your favorite?" And he bought her designer, like super expensive Fifth Avenue cookies in like a nice box, whatever. And when she goes to Grandma's house and finally talks to Grandma, Grandma has first of all, Grandma's like, "I don't want to talk to you," but she invites her in, and she has a full platter spread with cookies that she arranged like perfectly. It's an art form. You don't put out an art form cookie platter, Ryan, for a person unless you love that person, right? You can spend $80 on a box of Manhattan cookies like that if you're Wilson Fisk. That's not love. That's just like, here you go. Here's a gift. Come back to me. But that's love, that tray of cookies. And they made a point of showing. Grandma turns around with those cookies and was like, "Here, sit down." And I'm like, that's it. That's the difference. That's the shorthand storytelling here at its finest. So all those moments like that, they completely hit bullseyes every time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's time for us to rate this show now. How many Infinity Stones from 0 to 6, or maybe even a gauntlet, I don't know, are we given this show?
I'm giving it a 5.
5 stones. Why 5 stones?
But again, I summarized it already, and I'll say it one more time to really just hit that scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
Character arc there. Origin story, the best way to tell one there. Unique experience in the whole thing there. Villain there. Cameos there. All great stuff to make a great Marvel project and a great Marvel story. All there. The thing that really hurts it the most is the last final battle, and it should never. If you're gonna make a mistake, that's not where to do it. This show suffered the Snyder problem, which is great visuals, great storytelling, not the way to end it.
I don't know if you saw Rebel Moon, but if you did, I don't think you'd be saying great storytelling right now.
I'm talking like early Snyder here. Pre-Rebel Moon, I think Watchmen, perfect example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great story arc, great characters, great storytelling. Ending wasn't there.
5 stones is a good, solid place. In fact, it's such a good, solid place. I also gave it 5 stones.
It's a match.
It has moments that kind of irk me. The eye shooting really didn't need to happen. The dinner could have been so much better. That final resolution in that battle could have been so much better just from a technical standpoint. Like from an emotional standpoint, it rocks with Maya making that choice. I love it. And I think one important thing that stands out to me that really makes me happy is when I hear news of, hey, that girl from Hawkeye is getting a spinoff. And in the spinoff, after she shoots Fisk, she goes to Oklahoma and reconnects with her family in Oklahoma. Because I don't know, maybe I condition myself when it comes to streaming. I always condition myself to have like really low expectations. So I expected very little of the Kingpin main MCU storyline in this. I really did. I expected sort of the cheap, easy Netflix show / streaming show answer of all 5 episodes. I was literally expecting this, Ryan. I was expecting all 5 episodes where she goes there and she's like, "So, family, what's new?" And they're like, "Oh man, there's these bikers that have been messing with our water supply. Can you spend 5 episodes kicking them out?" Sure. That's what I was thinking was going to happen. Just like some cheap thing that I don't care about, where I'm like, just because I thought this character was awesome in Hawkeye doesn't mean I want to see her fight a biker gang that I don't care about for 5 episodes, right? But what we ended up with was continuing that storyline. And even though she tries to run from it, it comes to her. And I did not think we were going to get that much MCU lore built in there. So I'm really happy that we did, and it wasn't just cheap like spin-offy material that we got. So 5 stones, baby.
5 stones. I love it.
Well, sir, any final thoughts on Echo or on Captain Power and the Guardians of the Universe, or whatever that show was called?
Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
Boom!
Great name. And just watch that intro for the love of God, because it's so good. I expect to hear texted feedback about what that intro was like.
Oh, you will.
Great show. Spotlight's the way to go. Great format. Give me a mini series on a character, and then let's focus on events. We are way past individual story arcs. We need to start bringing these characters together, make them interesting, make these relationships interesting. That first episode should be the North Star of how you should do Marvel projects from here on in. I look forward to seeing where we go from here. I mean, now we're on a big hiatus for a while, so that's
MCU is, we're not.
We're not. Yes, I'm looking forward to this next project for us, a little side project here. But yeah, it's but in terms of Marvel, this is the way to go. But take your time, Marvel. Yeah. Kevin, I'm glad to hear that now you have time to look over these projects by giving yourself this breathing room. So we need to get back on track, people. I need Marvel to return to form, and Echo is a good place to start. Need to work on that conflict resolution there, but good place to start.
Yeah, and I'm curious now to see. I hope this isn't the last we've seen of Echo.
Yeah,
because I like her. She's good. And Alakwa Cox, like we said, plays her so well. I tell all my acting students all the time, my screen acting students, that every time you're on screen, particularly in a close-up, everything your face does is a big deal. Because when you're in a close-up, the slightest twitch tells the story, right? Mm. And Alakwa Cox does this amazing thing because she's always acting with her hands, for obvious reasons. So when her face joins the party, it becomes even more fun. Her hands will do all this stuff and be like, it's time for a queen. And then she does an eyebrow thing or whatever. And I'm just like, that just raised the stakes to 11. It's great. So I hope we see her again. I don't know in what context. Maybe she'll show up in Daredevil. Maybe she'll show up in, I don't know, Thunderbolts, whatever. But I'm happy that she got this resolution. And if we don't see her again, it's a great endpoint for the character. I feel
we should see her again. But you're right. You're not wrong. If this was her last project, which I hope it isn't. But
I hope it isn't either. It would suck. But if it is her last thing in the MCU, it's a fine place to end a character's story, considering what the journey we went on with her. Ryan, where can the people find you? Is it in Oklahoma? Are you going there as well? You got a truck?
Although I want to check it out now. You can find me on youtube.com/ExpertZone. That's where you can find my day job. And please support it by giving it a like and a subscribe.
Your night job is ninja.
My night job is fighting ninjas.
did you watch that Shinobi Geddon video I told you about?
No, I didn't. I still gotta watch it.
All right, I'm gonna send you a link. You can find me on Instagram, Andrew Fantasia, and on Amazon, where you can buy my fantasy novel, We Were Wizards. I'm biased, but I think it's even better than the Aragon Inheritance novels that I mentioned earlier. And you can get the second We Were Wizards book on Amazon as well. They go together like peanut butter and something that goes with peanut butter, because many things do. Yeah, exactly. You know what goes well together? Coffee and chili. I don't know why. It does. But anyway, that has been Infinity Rewatch about Echo. Next time you see us, we will be starting our mutant agenda, as it were, with Infinity Rewatch X. We're going through all the X-Men movies in release order. It's going to be a great time. At the end of the month, the end of January, look for our first episode of that. X-Men, it's coming. Until then, everybody, please I should have learned to say this in sign language. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, everybody. But in English and in ASL, please have a marvelous day.